Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down another AP Top 25 poll. And you know, it's crazy that we are 10 weeks into this college football season. 10 weeks into the season already. It's flown by, but it has already been one of the wildest college football seasons we have ever seen. And of course, that has provided us with some wild rankings and tons of shifts in the rankings as well. So like we have done all season, we are here to break down this new set of top 25 going into week 10. We're going to touch on every single team, 1 through 25, share our thoughts, opinions, whether we agree or disagree, and we will continue to do this all the way until the College Football Playoff Committee releases their first set of rankings, where we will then switch and we'll begin to release our own rankings because we do not agree with the playoff committee, and I can guarantee you, with the way things are going this year, we won't be agreeing with them here in a few weeks either. So let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. Again, if you want some more college football insight, news, and analysis, make sure to check out everything down in that description below, our Against the Spread picks on our website, our weekly newsletter on our website, BetNow partnerships, Patreon account. If you love college football, this is the place for you. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, and check out everything down in that description. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Week 10 AP Top 25 poll. Again, we're going into a monster week of college football. November is always one of the most wild months of the season. It doesn't matter what year it is. This year is going to be no different, and this year is going to be so important. Week 10, we've got some major matchups, ranked versus ranked matchups, 2 of which are coming inside the top 10. And we're going to get to those in a little bit, and we will get to those in our Week 10 predictions. But over here at number 1, we have Clemson. And actually, let's go ahead and just start from 1 to 5, because Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Georgia all remain in the same spots they were in Week 9. The top 5 teams in the country did not change going into Week 10, and they shouldn't have. They should not have. You know, some people are going to say, well, maybe Alabama should have jumped Clemson because Clemson struggled with Boston College. Maybe Ohio State should have moved up a spot because Ohio State went on the road and beat Penn State. Look, all of those great wins, maybe not as great performances as others. But what this shows me is last week we said that the top 2 teams in the country, in Clemson and Alabama, were not going to change unless one of them lost or maybe one of them struggled against an inferior opponent. We saw that this past weekend when Clemson came back down 18 and defeated Boston College in Death Valley. That was a closer than expected game against an inferior opponent, yet the Tigers remained at number 1. A win is a win, and Clemson also did it without Trevor Lawrence as quarterback. So what this shows me is that even if one of these top 5 teams or one of these top 3 teams struggles against an inferior opponent, as long as they get the win, they're not going to really shift their rankings. They didn't do it with Clemson. Alabama stayed at 2, Ohio State at 3, Notre Dame at 4 with their win over Georgia Tech, and then Georgia, very unimpressive performance against Kentucky, only winning that game 14-3, but remaining at number 5. Below Georgia, you have Cincinnati. Cincinnati up 1 spot after their 49-10 win against Memphis. The Bearcats, 6th ranked team in the country. Are you kidding me? Group of 5 team. Have a couple solid wins on their resume. Memphis was impressive. SMU, the week before that, was impressive. Have a win against a solid Army team as well. The Bearcats are undefeated. They're allowing just 12 points per game. They're dominating very good offensive teams such as SMU and Memphis and Army with that triple option. The Bearcats are 6th in the country, and say what you want. Say what you want, that they're not playoff contenders, that they don't deserve to be playoff contenders. I fully disagree. Number 6 is a perfect spot for them. When Oklahoma State fell to Texas, we'll touch on both here in a second, we knew Cincinnati was going to rise in the rankings. They moved up to that spot, taking the 6th place spot in the country, replacing the Cowboys. And look, the rest of their schedule is very manageable. The toughest games they have left are at Central Florida and at Tulsa. If they win that, and they win the American Athletic, they will be playoff contenders and will have a strong case to making the Final Four in December. But I will tell you now, they're 6th in the country here. Maybe they rise up to number 5. Maybe they stay at 6 here in the next few weeks. When the playoff committee releases their first set of rankings, the Bearcats will be lower than they are in the AP poll. They should still, to me, be a top 10 team, a top 12 team at worst. But they will not be as high as they are in the AP poll if they continue to win. Simply because their strength of schedule is not nearly as good as some of the other teams in the top 25. And we knew that. We've seen that in recent years with teams such as Central Florida, dominating opponents left and right, but it could never really, when the playoff committee released their first set of rankings, never was that as high as they were in the AP poll. We will see that again with Cincinnati, but it won't be as drastic as a difference as some think. The Bearcats are playoff contenders. They're just going to need some help to get there. Texas A&M at number 7. They defeated Arkansas 42-31, a game where the score looked a little bit closer than it really was. Remember, A&M was leading Arkansas 42-17 before giving up a few late scores there. So Texas A&M up 1. Again, they're playoff contenders as well. The rest of their schedule is very, very manageable. LSU not looking daunting at all, not nearly as good as they were last year, and we knew that. They've already gotten Alabama out of the way. So they've lost to Alabama, they're still number 7 in the country. They win out, A&M to me is almost a lock for the playoff because more than likely they're not going to have to play for the SEC title, which means that they're just going to get a bye week. And depending on what happens in the Pac-12, maybe what happens in the Big 12, although their chances aren't looking very good, the Aggies could get into the playoff as that 4th team without winning their championship. And that's something that we saw a few years ago with Alabama. You know, Auburn won the West, but fell to Georgia in the title game, and Alabama got in as the 4 seed and ultimately won the national championship. A&M could be in store for a similar scenario, not necessarily winning the title, but still slipping in to that college football playoff. Florida in at number 8. The Gators moving up 2 spots after their win over Missouri. They have a huge game this Saturday, as well as BYU cracking the top 10 for the first time this season. They have a big game this Saturday. Georgia and Florida will be playing on Saturday afternoon down in Jacksonville, number 5 and number 8. So you've got a top 10 matchup. Holy cow. How great is that? Gators, Bulldogs should be a great game, should be an instant classic, obviously one that has major playoff implications and one that should ultimately decide who wins the SEC East. Got that one coming up. We'll talk on that tomorrow. We'll talk on that later in the week as well, one of our games of the week. BYU, they're cracked the top 10 for the first time. They're number 9. They go on the road to face Boise State, number 21, on Friday night. Also, one of our top 5 games of the week. More analysis on that coming out tomorrow. That's going to be an opportunity for us to see, is this BYU team for real? Are they as good as they appear to be? They're undefeated. They're dominating opponents left and right, but Boise State on the road will absolutely be the toughest test they have faced all season. So that's going to be a great opportunity for us, and we kind of didn't disregard it. We didn't want to bring it up yet, but that's a big game. Florida-Georgia's a big game. Clemson, Notre Dame, that's a big game. That is also our second game of the week, or at least one of the 2 games of the week. And we will have more analysis on that coming out tomorrow and later on in the week as well. But number 1 and number 4, number 5 and number 8, number 9 and number 21, all having major implications on the college football playoff and the individual conference races. Not so much for BYU and Boise, but that's going to play a major role in New Year's 6 bowl berths and maybe playoff for the Cougars. So tons of big games coming your way in Week 10. And then finally, Wisconsin rounding out our top 10. They dropped a spot because they simply didn't play. There were a few shifts here and there they didn't play, and the major question for Wisconsin is, will they play? Will the Badgers play in 2020? Now, they already played once against Illinois, but they lose their quarterback in Graham Mertz. They lose the backup. You know, Jack Cohn's already out, so you lose Cohn, you lose Mertz, you lose the backup, you lose your coach in Paul Chryst, and the Big Ten is requiring their players, and I guess coaches as well, to quarantine for 21 days if you test positive for COVID. Wisconsin can't go 3 weeks without playing college football, guys, especially with the way the Big Ten schedule is structured. So the Badgers, we really need to keep an eye on them. I assume they will find a way to play on Saturday when they take on Purdue. But they're not going to be at full strength. That's something to keep your eye on. And the health of the team and the scheduling of the team as a whole is something to monitor as we continue throughout this season. But the Badgers, down at number 10, certainly are a top 10 team as of right now. And probably are Ohio State's biggest threat in the Big Ten. Plain and simple. They wouldn't meet until the Big Ten championship anyways. Second column here, Miami. They're up a spot. They had a bye week up to number 11. Don't have to touch on the Hurricanes too much. They travel to North Carolina State on Friday. Oregon in at number 12. They're up 2 spots. The Pac-12 is back in Week 10. The crazy thing is we don't really have many marquee Pac-12 matchups that we might even talk about this week. Certainly going to be some football that we're going to watch, and we'll talk about it in the recap later on. But there aren't any major Pac-12 matchups simply because there are only 2 teams, Oregon and USC, that are ranked in the Pac-12 as of right now. So no ranked versus ranked matchups. And obviously the Ducks are the heavy favorite in the conference, the heavy favorite to repeat as Pac-12 champions. But the Ducks up to number 12, a fair spot for them. But after they play Stanford on Saturday. After they play, I would expect the Ducks to catapult into the top 10 where they really belong. Indiana moving up 4 spots. They went on the road and took down Rutgers. They're 2-0. They've defeated Penn State, defeated Rutgers. They host Michigan on Saturday. A win over the Wolverines. And the Hoosiers are going to be a top 10 team. No doubt in my mind. Especially with all the shifts in the top 10 coming your way on Saturday. At least 2 top 10 teams guaranteed to lose on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. So Indiana, certainly a team you want to watch out for. They look great on defense against Rutgers. Michael Penix had another fantastic game. And again, you're going to say, well, that was just Rutgers. Rutgers is legit now. I'm not saying they're Big Ten title contenders. I'm not saying they're even in the upper half of Big Ten teams. But I am saying they're no longer a pushover. And they're no longer a laughingstock where you're going to say, yeah, you put up these stats against Rutgers, anybody could do that. That's not the case anymore. Rutgers was in that game against the Hoosiers. Indiana simply the better team, up 4 spots, number 13, ahead of Oklahoma State now, who dropped 8 spots following their loss to Texas. That 41-34 overtime loss to the Longhorns. One that did not derail Oklahoma State's chances of winning the Big 12, but maybe did for Oklahoma State's chances of making the playoff. Now, we've seen Oklahoma especially lose a game in conference play, the only loss in their season, win out, win the Big 12, and make the playoff. So sitting at 14 right now, having yet to play Oklahoma, having yet to play Kansas State, who they will face off against this Saturday, the Cowboys could work their way back into playoff contention and conversation if they win out. It's unlikely. It's going to be very difficult, but we've seen it happen. They just got to win out, and it starts this Saturday against Kansas State. The loss of Texas hurts, but all their goals are still in sight and are still attainable. So Oklahoma State, they dropped 8. A little bit harsh in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of that, considering Oklahoma State dominated that game. Really, it wasn't to me that Texas won the game. It was that Oklahoma State gave it away. You're not going to win a game when you go 4 turnovers and allow a 100-yard kickoff return. It's not going to happen. So I think 8 spots is a little harsh, but nonetheless, they can still make some damage and make some noise, both in the Big 12 and nationally. Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, we touched on them in our recap, kind of called them America's team. Called them a team that everybody's excited to watch. And really one of those feel-good stories of college football this season. Chanticleers are undefeated, are coming off their first shutout victory since 2015, shutting out Georgia State 51-0. And they've got a great quarterback in Grayson McCall. 5 touchdowns last week against the Panthers, over 250 yards. And again, Coastal Carolina has a great chance to go undefeated. The toughest games remaining are App State and Liberty, both of which are at home. Coastal Carolina wins both of those. They should go undefeated. They would be my favorite now to win the Sun Belt. And all I'm saying is if Cincinnati slips up somewhere, Central Florida, Tulsa, Houston coming up, who knows where it could be. But if Cincinnati slips up, Coastal Carolina could be the highest ranked Group of 5 champion. Let that sink in. Nobody thought that was going to happen. And yet they have a chance to do it if the Bearcats slip up somewhere. Same goes for Marshall, another Group of 5 team that I love. A team that when you look at their schedule, they should finish 8-0. Should finish 8-0. Brendan Knox at running back, Grant Wells at quarterback, and that stingy defense. They're the favorite in the Conference USA, no doubt about it. 16th ranked team in the country. One of my dream matchups this season would be Marshall and Coastal Carolina. never thought I would say I really want to see a matchup between those two teams, but this year I do. Two great feel-good stories, two great teams all the way around, very sound on offense and defense, are looking to make some noise just across the board, but could really make some more noise if Cincinnati slips up somewhere. Iowa State moving up 6 spots. They took down Kansas this past weekend, and let me tell you what, the Cyclones are still Big 12 title contenders. Only one conference loss, and listen to the remaining schedule. Home against Baylor, home against Kansas State, on the road against Texas, home against West Virginia. They've got 3 of their last 4 games coming in Ames. Baylor looks like a pretty solid victory to me. West Virginia could easily be a win. Kansas State, after their performance against West Virginia, could be a win. So, Iowa State is a Big 12 title contender. Very well could go 3-1 or 4-0. Texas, yeah, they beat Oklahoma State, but still have some struggles, some things to work out. Could go 3-1 or 4-0 down the stretch, which would propel them to me into top 10 category and certainly Big 12 title categories as well. And just think, if they hadn't lost to Louisiana, if they hadn't lost a few weeks ago, or last week to Oklahoma State, and they were to win out, imagine where the Cyclones could be. Maybe playoff discussion. SMU up at number 18, moved up 4 spots with the win over Navy. Defense is still horrendous, but their offense bailed them out in this one, something they were unable to do against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. Oklahoma making some noise, up 5 spots. They beat Texas Tech 62-28. They've got Kansas coming up. They got a bye week, and they've got Bedlam against Oklahoma State. That's going to be the big one. That's going to be the big game. That's going to really make or break Oklahoma's Big 12 title hopes. It's going to make or break Oklahoma State's Big 12 title hopes and maybe playoff hopes. This is going to be a big one. Everybody wrote off the Sooners after that 1-2 start. And they're slowly working their way back up the rankings, and they actually have a shot to make the Big 12 championship. Again, something we didn't think was going to happen after their poor start. So the Sooners in at number 19. USC in at 20. The other Pac-12 team, as we mentioned, only 2, the Ducks and now the Trojans. They face off against Arizona State on Saturday afternoon. That's going to be a very fun one. Not a ranked versus ranked matchup, but one that the Trojans cannot afford to overlook. And to me, they are probably Oregon's toughest test and toughest competition in the Pac-12 this season. Boise State in at number 21, up 4 spots. They're 2-0. Just defeated Air Force 49-30. Again, they host BYU on Friday night on the Smurf turf. Number 9 at number 21 on Friday night. That is must-see football, guys. 2 great teams here, but the biggest storyline, of course, is going to be, is BYU legit? We've seen them play so well all season long. Best wins are what, against Houston and Navy? Mediocre teams in the American Athletic. This is their first legit test. It comes on the road on a Friday night. If BYU wins this game, we know they're for real. We absolutely know they're for real. And they get a huge resume-boosting win that could really help them in their quest of making the college football playoff, something that's not impossible if the Cougars go undefeated. So that's must-see TV. Boise State looking very good. Beat Air Force without their quarterback in Hank Bachmeier. Texas back in the rankings at number 22. And kind of like Oklahoma here, a team that's not going away without a fight. Their remaining games are against West Virginia, on the road against Kansas, Iowa State at home, and on the road against Kansas State. Good chance they could go 3-1 or 4-0 down the stretch. If they do, they are absolutely in Big 12 title contention. The Longhorns, they needed that win on the road in Stillwater, not just for their Big 12 title hopes, but I think for Tom Herman's job. I think if he loses that game, Herman is more than likely going to get fired at season's end. That may have just saved his job. The remainder of the season is going to be very telling as well. But a big win for Texas. They're back in the rankings. So Oklahoma and Texas, the 2 teams that we thought were going to be the top 2 teams in the Big 12, are lower in the standings, behind Iowa State, behind Oklahoma State, but they're still there. So the Big 12 getting a little bit more parity in the rankings, and certainly going to play a major role for everybody's resume going forward. Michigan in at number 23. They were the largest faller out of remaining teams in the top 25. They were the largest dropper in the rankings, dropping 10 spots. 10 spots, again, after their loss to Michigan State. And that was a bad loss. Inexcusable loss. Michigan State, horrible performance against Rutgers. They come into Ann Arbor. They come into the big house. You let your rival come into the big house and beat you after you beat Minnesota by 25? Terrible. Embarrassing for the Wolverines. They're 23rd right now. They go to Indiana on Saturday. A loss there, they're out of the rankings. A loss there, Harbaugh might be done because it's only going to get tougher from there. You've got Indiana. After that, they play Wisconsin. They've got Ohio State later on. Could end up being a disastrous year for Michigan after having such high expectations going into it. And then finally, Auburn and Liberty, both new to the rankings. Auburn getting in there after their 48-11 win over LSU. And again, I don't really agree with the Tigers being ranked here. You know, they're, what, 4-2 now? Many would want to say they're 2-4. You know, they should have lost to Arkansas. They should have lost to Ole Miss. But look, a win's a win. They found a way to win those games. And the Tigers are in at number 24 here. Again, LSU, an impressive win for Auburn. LSU was without their star quarterback, Miles Brennan. So while they did dominate, LSU's worst loss since 1996, it needs to be taken. Some things need to be taken into consideration. And we're really going to see going forward if Auburn is this legit or not. Obviously, it's been a little bit of a disappointment already, having been unable to hang with the big dog already in Georgia. Might not be able to hang with Alabama later on, but 4-2, they're back in the rankings. Liberty in at number 25. They should have been in the rankings earlier. Hugh Freeze has his team at 6-0. Absolutely a force on offense. Malik Willis, my goodness, he is so difficult to stop at quarterback. And the Flames now travel to Virginia Tech on Saturday, where they are 15.5-point underdogs. The Flames are 15.5-point underdogs at Virginia Tech. Again, the Hokies not even ranked. That's going to be maybe one of the most underrated games of Week 10. One that could be an upset, not because Virginia Tech is going to beat Liberty, but because Liberty could find a way to beat Virginia Tech. So keep an eye on that one here. But the Flames in the rankings, and they certainly deserve to be. So there you have it, guys, your Week 10 AP Top 25 poll. Again, it has been a wild year of college football. I mean, look at this. No North Carolina, no Penn State, no LSU, the reigning champs. I mean, those are just three teams that we expected to be in the rankings almost all season long, and they're nowhere to be found. So obviously it's a wild year. Who expected Coastal Carolina and Marshall to be top 20 teams? Liberty in there at number 25. Indiana at number 13. Cincinnati at number 6. BYU at 9. I mean, come on. You can't make this stuff up. But this is what makes college football so great, so exciting, and so unpredictable. So a very interesting top 25 here. Not too many disagreements, although I'm sure we will have many of those after a very hectic, a very exciting, and a very important Week 10 of college football. Again, analysis on some of those top games coming your way later this week, so make sure not to miss it. And once again, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and like we mentioned at the beginning, make sure to check out everything down in that description below. If you love college football, this is the place for you, and everything in that description is for you. So make sure to check it out. And once again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.